Above all else, D-Day in Normandy was about leadership. At every level, from squad and section to corps commander, our forces were blessed with extraordinarily competent and dedicated leaders. They knew their men, they knew the objective, and with victory hanging in the balance, they carried out their mission. With the sea at their backs, the confusion of combat stripped the veneer off everyone, exposing the strong character of leaders across the ranks. The combat teams moved steadfastly against the enemy and showed the world what dedicated, competent people can do in perilous times. Their example echoes across the years, reminding our present-day military that no challenge they face can be tougher than what the men of D-Day overcame in Normandy.
We have a special guest at Omaha Beach, Charles Shay, who was a medic at Omaha Beach, 1st Wave, 1st Division. And he's got some very unusual experiences that he'll share with you. It's very rare nowadays we have a vet. When I first came here, my first trip was 1977. And there were hundreds of vets, literally, that came back, and they would wander around and talk to you and speak to you and show you what happened, what their personal life experience was for that short period of time. We're now down to not very many, and the ones that you do see were 18, 19 years old at the time of the invasion. Charles was a medic. He was a Penobscot Indian from Maine, and he spent most of D-Day with his face in the sand, pulling wounded soldiers out of the water and treating them as best he could. His best friend, his platoon sergeant, died in his arms. And so he's got some very interesting views of D-Day, 1st Wave. The guy's a treasure because there's so few of them left. So when you see him and you talk to him, put yourself in his shoes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Medic Private Charlie Shay, Penobscot Indian from Maine. On D-Day, he was a medic in the 16th Infantry Regiment. He was one of the people that stood up and did the job that they were supposed to do. He went through the entire morning dragging people out of the water, pulling them up to where they wouldn't be drowned, and saw his best friend die in his arms. He is one of the few remaining veterans of D-Day and Omaha Beach. He saw the worst of what life can bring to him, and he did an incredible job at that 4 or 5 hour period in terms of service. Let's give Charlie a hand here. Charlie, is there anything particular you want to say to the troops?
Well, I hope you never have to go through something like that. It was hell on that day, 6th of June, 1944. We lost many men were killed in action on that day. And I was one of the fortunate ones. I made it through, and well, I'm still here.
Charlie, what was your impression before you actually landed ashore? The amount of material, the ships, the seasickness, the whole bit.
First of all, the Germans had placed obstacles on the beach made out of iron trestles of some sort, crisscrossed, and this went out well into the water. This was to prevent just such things taking place as what we did, landing here. When the ramps dropped, of course, we were subject to machine gun, rifle fire, mortars, and the men that were standing in the front of the landing craft, when the ramp went down, they lost their protection, and they were some of the first men to die. And when I left the landing craft, I landed in water up to my chest. I used the obstacles that the Germans had placed into the into the water and up to the shore. I was doing what every soldier was doing. I was using these as protection to get up to the beach, to the dry beach, and so I could make a dash for the dry beach and up to the beach where there was a little bit of a hedgerow from the debris that had been washed up over many, many years. And it built up on the top of the beach, it built up a defilade. I don't know what it really is. And this offered some protection. I started treating the wounded there, and one of the wounded that I found on the beach was a very good friend of mine. He was also a medic who came from New Jersey. I did not know this at the time where he came from, but he was a good friend of mine because we had associated while we were stationed in England, went out for a beer occasionally or such things as this. He was hit in the stomach. I had a bad stomach wound, and he was bleeding. And I could not treat him properly because I could not stop the bleeding because I would have needed forceps lock that I could have used and got into his stomach and clamped down on the vein that was bleeding. But we did not have such things. And even if we did, uh, there was the possibility of infection because it would have been contaminated by just carrying it in my bag. I tried to console him and did what I could for him. I tried to bandage him. It was difficult to bandage because it was an open stomach wound. He was not alive very long in my care because he died in my arms. I later found out, many, many years, found out where he came from. I think in 2000, I had contacted the man that keeps the records in the 16th Infantry Regiment, the morning reports, and asked him if he could give me the home address for this particular person, and he was able to find it. And I contacted the people. The only immediate family he had still living was a sister. I made arrangements to visit them, and before I went to them, I prepared a framed picture of him, and I had his medals. He had the Purple Heart and a couple of others, the Silver Star he earned also. And when I visited them, I presented his sister with this photograph and his medals, and she was very happy, and she thanked me. Of course, she was crying very badly, but she was still very happy to know really what happened to him because they had no idea. He had been killed in action, that was all she knew. And I was able to fill them in what really happened to him and that I had treated him and talked with him in his last minutes. And she was very happy to receive this information and to know what really happened to him. We eventually were able to leave the beaches, and at the beginning I had lost my company. I was in F Company, 2nd Battalion. Our objective was Colville-sur-Mer, which is right up here someplace. And it was getting late at night, and I was very tired, so I found a place to sleep in the grass, and I laid down and I went to sleep. And when I woke up in the early morning, I was surrounded by dead Germans and dead Americans. It was like sleeping in a graveyard. I eventually made my way to Colville-sur-Mer, and The man that was in charge of the aid station was Sergeant Ray Lambert. He was seriously wounded in the landing operation, but he lived, and he just died about 5 or 6 years ago. We met after the war, and we were able to discuss. Had written a book about myself, and Ray Lambert also had a book written, but he had his book written by a professional writer, and his book is very good. I'm a Native American from the state of Maine, and we have no voting rights at that particular time. And my mother was an advocate for voting rights, and she was an advocate for her people. Not only voting rights, but other problems that we had with the state government. I came home on leave. I was in uniform. I was only a private. And there was a voting going on for it was a local election. And my mother put me at the front of the line, and we went to the voting, and they turned me away. They said, you are not, because you're an Indian, you have no voting rights. I was okay if I got killed in the action, but that still didn't help me. I had no voting rights.
Well, I described to you history. He lived it. Big difference. Thank you, Charles.